My pastor asked me. We have 20 minutes allotted for worship.
I like this gentleman's perspective on how we should not limit God's power and ability to work within a certain given time span. But I have often wondered, why is it that modern Christianity equates and limits worship to just music? I mean, it's like the majority of Christianity seems to believe that worshiping God can only happen within a 20 or 30 minute or even an hour-long song service in church. Of course, I did not grow up in a faith tradition where 30, 40, 20-minute worship services happened in church. Yes, we had opening hymns, closing hymns, special music, but my personal belief on this is that worship transcends and is so much more than just singing a 20-minute song service. Yes, it can include that, don't get me wrong, but as I was thinking about that this morning, I Googled it, and I came across this fascinating article, Worship Does Not Mean Singing and Music by John Davis, written about 9 years ago. It's fascinating. And he brings out a really good point, and that is that there are over 200 occurrences of the word worship in Scripture, and three of them refer to singing. And I like how he brought out this list of what worship can include according to the Bible. Worship includes prayer. This is why you will hear me say that praying to the dead saints, as Catholics are taught to do, that's idolatry, because prayer is worship. Beholding Jesus, contemplating him, studying the Scriptures, yes, it can include singing. But more importantly, worship is obedience to God. Here are just a couple of examples he brought out of scriptures that have to do with worship that don't include music. And here he brings out how Jesus himself says God's worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. And then notice it doesn't say music. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with music. There's nothing wrong with playing a guitar, singing a hymn to God. But worship and music are not synonymous with each other. And I like how he brought out Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And Paul basically is talking about how we live our physical lives, how we take care of our health, and connects it with being an act of worship. So that means how we eat, how we live, how we exercise are acts of worship to God. So if we disobey the Bible's health laws, we're worshiping self, not Jesus. And here in Revelation 14, verses 6 through 12, the Bible lists in prophetic terms what the gospel is. And one of those things is worship. And guess what? Where it says worship, that's a quote from the Sabbath commandment. Keeping the commandments of God, including the Sabbath, that's an act of worship to Him. Fearing God is also connected with obedience in the Bible. Giving glory to Him, that's connected with living healthy, according to 1 Corinthians 10. So I personally believe it's really important that we as Christians, we don't limit worshiping God to just singing 20 minutes once a week. The highest form of worship is obedience, because you love